In today's show, Shaedon Sharpe is nearing a return to play. It's great news for the Trailblazers and for you. Plus, Andy Patton of Locked On College Basketball joins the program, and we preview the college basketball season for the Blazers fan. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same as Locked On Blazers, your team every day. This week, we didn't get 5 shows a week. I apologize. Scheduling snafu. Was supposed to have a guest come on Tuesday's show. That interview fell through, and sometimes life gets in the way. I apologize. I know you were looking for a show on Wednesday morning. Maybe a little sense of normalcy after a major day in American history, and I wasn't there for you, and I apologize. I'm sorry, but we're back. We will do 4 shows this week, and we'll be back on our 5-a-week grind, I promise. In today's program, Shaedon Sharpe coming back soon, real soon, like maybe as soon as this evening. Plus, we will talk with Andy Patton, or as soon as the Blazers' next game, and we will talk with Andy Patton of Locked On College Basketball. Andy will give us everything we need to know as Trailblazers watchers about who we should watch in the collegiate season. So, like I said, Sharpe's going to play in the next game. I said he's going to play tomorrow, but I think I'm going to put this out a little bit early so you can get your fix in. So he's going to play when the Blazers take on the Spurs on Thursday, the first night of a couple in a row. Thursday at San Antonio and then Friday at Minnesota. Shaedon Sharpe likely to return, and here's why you know he's likely to return: because the Blazers have done the procedural thing to suggest that he's likely to return. They announced on the official injury report that came out on Wednesday afternoon that Shaedon Sharpe has been upgraded to questionable. He has spent the full season with the out designation because he sustained a labral tear, a posterior labral tear, tore a small tear in his labrum in his left shoulder. The team announced that injury on October 5th. And they gave a 4 to 6 week timeline. So a return on to a game November 7th, if he does indeed play on Thursday, and I believe he will, that's about as that's the short end. That is the 4-week end, and about the shortest end of that timeline you could possibly hope for. I think that's good news. I talked to someone within the Blazers who, right when it happened, and they were cautiously optimistic, but I would emphasize the caution that was there. This is really good news because, one, he's just a good basketball player, or at least, and has potential to be much more than that potentially. But like he's one of the most hopeful parts of this whole franchise right now. It's Sharpe. Sharpe has the highest potential of anyone on the team, highest ceiling of anyone on the team. Reaching that ceiling is a whole nother question, right? Like reaching that ceiling is kind of what we're hoping to see from him this year. But I would say just in sort of raw potential, the dude who could be the best player on the roster, young Shaedon Sharpe entering year 3 is the dude who is most capable of it. So let's talk about kind of how he's going to fit into the puzzle to begin with. I think Shaedon Sharpe comes off the bench initially. I would be surprised if they throw him into the starting lineup. It is typically easier when someone is coming back from an injury to manage their minutes in one of 2 ways. One is to put them in the starting lineup and only play them the first 6 minutes of each half and say, you're going to play 12 minutes. Or you bring them off the bench, and that way you can kind of manage it. If they need to play like a 4-minute spurt, you can bring someone back in. If you feel like they want to play, give them a little bit longer, 9 minutes or so, you can play them a little bit longer. I can imagine Shea plays like 30 some minutes his first night, but I wouldn't be surprised if he plays a bunch. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he plays 24 minutes in his first night because his injury was to his arm. You can work out with, you can keep your cardio up a little bit. You can't really simulate game shape without playing, but it's not like it's not a foot injury where he just didn't do anything and he's like he's like lost his wind to some extent. But I bet he could play. But if you are going to be a little bit cautious and you are going to like say, okay, let's see what it's like and make sure that he can take a hit and dish out a hit. Hopefully we see Shaedon dish out some contact at the rim. Then the most reasonable way to ease someone into the rotation is to bring them off the bench. So I assume initially he will be coming off the bench. Here's the thing. There is no good scenario for the Blazers where Shaedon Sharpe isn't the starting shooting guard eventually. And that eventuality you want to happen in December, if not in November, right? Like you don't want this to be a thing where Shaedon Sharpe is like not quite as good as Toumani Camara. Toumani Camara has been a really solid NBA player this season. But if you're hoping for the Blazers to get good in the future, Shaedon Sharpe needs to be just way better than him, right? It needs to be unquestionable. It needs to be like, yeah, get those dudes out of the way because he needs to play. Like you need it to be very, like the best case scenario is that it's very, very clear, right? That there's no debating and hemming and hawing, although like this is a hemming and hawing based medium, so if you need to hem and haw, you'll know where to find me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com, and also this show's wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. So initially I imagine Thursday with that questionable designation, he comes off the bench and plays somewhat limited minutes, gets his wind. There's no reason he couldn't play back-to-backs, right? No reason he couldn't play back-to-backs. So he could conceivably play Friday as well. There's nothing about the injury and him coming back at the 4 weekend that says like, oh, well, you have to ease him back into it. That's not what this is. If they're clearing him to play, he should be able to play and then eventually move into that starting role. But if he does come off the bench, I think you get your typical starters and you'll get a little Scoot Shaedon action off the bench. But it does complicate things a little bit down the line for guys who have shown out this year. And this is kind of the challenge of the Blazers roster as it is currently constructed, is they have a bunch of young players who you'd like to see more from, but there's only so many minutes to go around. Now, I know my man Steve Kerr is down there in Golden State playing 12 dudes a night, but most teams play 9 or 10, and 10 is even relatively rare across the league. I heard Mike Brown give an interview with the Sacramento Kings that like he doesn't like to play 10 because guys just don't play long enough to get a rhythm. And when I covered the Blazers as a beat reporter, Terry Stotts shared a similar opinion. For the most part, during almost his entire tenure, Chauncey Billups has played 9 guys, maybe 9.5, where you play a guy for the first half but not the second. And Chauncey Billups has said very clearly that he also prefers to play 9 guys. So it's going to get tightened a little bit, which means that players you want to see aren't going to play. And specifically, I think that Shaedon Sharpe very obviously eats into Ryan Rupert's minutes. Rupert's mostly playing like a guard role. He's playing like a 2-3-ish role, depending on what position you think he plays when he's in there. But he's playing that 2-3 spot that Sharpe would occupy. They're not very similar players in terms of their skill set and what they bring to the table, but in terms of like positional minutes they would eat up, I think Sharpe is probably going to eat into Ryan Rupert's minutes. And it makes it a little bit trickier to play Delano Banton before the fourth quarter. I think Delano Banton's performances over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and then on Monday, like they probably warrant like playing prior to the final quarter. But if Sharpe is back and he's going to play, like the Blazers just have a lot more like franchise investment in Shaedon Sharpe than they do Banton. It doesn't mean that Banton can't play. It just means that it complicates it a little bit more because the team is going to play Shaedon Sharpe. They are going to play Scoot Henderson. They are going to play Anthony Simons. And if you try to fit a fourth guard-ish in there, it's not easy. And like even if you think that Delano Banton can play like exclusively small forward, it's like positions aren't maybe that meaningful. But the Blazers have Toumani and Denny and Jeremy Grant who are going to soak up a bunch of minutes at those spots anyways. It gets a little bit trickier as you have more guys who need to play. I'm not saying DB won't play. I'm just saying it was already, you had to like not play Chris Murray in the second half. I don't think he plays now with Shaedon Sharpe back, and then not play Denny Avdia in the fourth quarter just to get DB on the court. Like you were already doing some of the sort of number crunching to play Banton, and now you're adding Sharpe to the mix, who again the team has a lot more invested in franchise wise. It's like a top 10 pick as opposed to a guy on a non-guaranteed minimum deal. It's just a very different situation, and the contracts do matter to some extent in terms of like in terms of who they want to get on the court, because who they're invested in being on the court in the future. That's what I mean by the contracts matter. At some point, if you're good, you're going to play. And I guess if DB keeps playing like he's been playing, he's going to play. But like he's been playing like Michael freaking Jordan. So if he's that good, my man's going to play. I think the other good thing about Shaedon Sharpe playing is like he's just good. We're going to get to see him. Blazers need another guy who can create his own shot. He has Sharpe at his best, can score on the ball. He can score off the ball. He can get himself to the rim. He hasn't been great getting himself to the rim off the bounce. I think that's a big place for him to grow. He's been a good cutter getting to the rim, but getting all the way to the cup off the bounce was something that he wasn't as good at last year as I thought he might be. But he has a pull-up game. He can, like, from mid-range, he can shoot. He can, in theory, he's a good shooter from three, although his numbers weren't particularly good last year. In theory, the Shaedon Sharpe fully actualized is somebody who does just about dang near everything on the offensive end and has the physical profile to eventually be a good defender, although he has not been that to his career. But Sharpe's ceiling remains incredibly high, and it's incredibly important for what the Blazers are building here to find out what they have in Sharpe. And not just find out what they have in Sharpe, but find out what they have next to Sharpe, next to Scoot Henderson. Find out what they have with Sharpe next to Anfernee Simons. Find out what they have if they play that trio together, although I don't think they will with any regularity because of the way the rest of the roster shakes out. So it'll be – I'm fascinated to see what Shea looks like. I am excited to watch him play, and I think there is a ripple effect down the roster that we will see some guys get squeezed a little bit, but also like that's just the nature of having a young team with a relatively flat talent curve, is like some dudes who are probably equally talented are not going to play some nights, and Sharpe's going to play. And I for one am very excited to watch him. Let's shift gears a little bit. In the second segment, friend of the program, a true friend of the program, Andy Patton, who hosts Locked On College Basketball and also Locked On Zags right here on the network, is going to join me, and we're going to preview the college basketball season and talk a little bit about who to watch as a Trailblazers fan. Join me in the second segment, won't ya? First, I want to tell you, yes, about my underwear. Listen, Skims makes comfortable underwear, and they make comfortable underwear for men. You might have think of Skims as a brand for maybe someone else in your household, but trust me, they're comfortable. They got a great fit. The design is smooth. They are underwear you don't notice, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. You put them on, you roll around, you go about your day, and you feel freaking comfortable. Skims was kind enough to send me over some pairs, and I love these things. I'm rocking them on the regular. I'm living my life noticing the comfort, and more importantly, not noticing the comfort, because the best underwear is the underwear you don't notice. The best underwear is what you're rocking. You say, I feel good. I'm not thinking I'm just living, in Skims is absolutely going to do that with the sleek design and the absolute comfort. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show. That's my show right here, Locked On Blazers, in the drop-down menu that follows. So when you go to skims.com and you select and you hit two drop-down menus, podcast, Locked On Blazers. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. Also available at skims.com. All right. Joining me now, friend of the program, Andy Patton from Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Zags. Andy, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. We've seen one game of Cooper Flagg. Is it real? Is this the next big thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think the thing that's going to be interesting about Cooper Flagg and how kind of fans and people interact with him is that he's not going to be like this 25, 28, 30 point per game scorer. I mean, there's not a lot of that in college basketball in general, just because 40-minute games and whatnot. But I think he's, I think the Andre Kirilenko comparisons are a little bit lazy, quite honestly, but he is a really impactful defensive player. And I do think that the fact that that's where most of his kind of value comes from means he's maybe going to be more valued by like scouts and analysts and people who really study the game, as opposed to more, casual fans or, NBA fans who are just like, who should my team take? And they're seeing like, well, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Cooper Flagg doesn't lead Duke in scoring this year. I think one of their other freshmen, Con Knipple, might actually be the guy who does that. And that doesn't mean he's a better prospect, because Flagg is so versatile in what he can bring defensively, and he's a good playmaker, a good distributor for a guy at his size. I mean, I think he really is going to be a great NBA player, but is he going to be generational? Is he going to lead the NBA in scoring? Probably not, but I think he's going to be the best player that comes out of this draft class. Like, I think that's barring a nuclear glow up from like a Dylan Harper or an Ace Bailey or somebody like that. I think Cooper's going to be the best player. He's just not quite as flashy as some of the guys we've seen in the past.
Can I give you a comp that is not an Anglo,
yes.
like an Anglo hooper? I think he's a little bit of Lamar Odom. I think he has a little bit of that Lamar Odom, because his best skill on night one of his collegiate career, to my eyes, was the passing. He made a couple passes off the dribble where it's like, dang. Like he had one where he drove baseline and whipped it to the corner to Knipple. I was silencing the K because I got to tell you, I'm a Tar Heel, man. I was watching the Duke game on mute. I didn't want to hear it. I just wanted to watch the basketball. Yeah. And it was during the Blazer game, so I had out my second screen, and Carolina was playing at the same time, and they were losing to Elon, and it was a chaotic night for me. But I felt my duty as someone who hosts a podcast of a team that's going to be trying to capture the flag. I think, unless they just DB keeps winning them games. Shout out to Delano Banton, that was my duty to watch Flagg's day one debut. Obviously, like, a long way to go, and Maine is not exactly an elite team. Is Maine an elite team? Am I wrong about that? Okay, good.
No, they're not.
I was like, I don't follow college basketball that closely. Is this like an elite mid-major program?
Let me give you a quick note on that. The team that's expected to finish first in the conference Maine is in is Vermont, and they just got beat by 50 by Auburn. So that gives you a good sense of where we're at.
Okay. But I thought, to me, Flagg was like the special part of his game was the passing, was the playmaking at his size, and the ability to make passes off the dribble at his size. And to me, that's a little bit of Lamar Odom. He needs a baggier jersey, and he needs to go to Rhode Island with that sweet baby blue. But he's there. So there was I believe it was an anonymous source that said that maybe that Flagg kind of tops out as a role player, and I'm hearing kind of whispers of that in your early scout. That seems somewhat insulting, but like is Cooper Flagg worth losing 65 games for if he is Lamar Odom? And what is your take on that?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think it sort of depends on your definition of role player. I think some people hear that and take it as far more of an insult than I think it probably is. Like as somebody who's in the Gonzaga space, like, I've heard Chet Holmgren described as a role player, and I don't. It's like, if you think role player is an insult, you definitely wouldn't describe Chet like that. But Chet's not going to be a number one, most likely. Right. And I also wouldn't be surprised if Cooper Flagg is never a number one on a championship team, only because I think he's not going to be a 30-point per game scorer. And I don't know how many teams recently have won a championship without a 30-point scorer close to that. And so I think if he's your second best player and your best defensive player and you're one of your best, if not your best facilitator, like, I think you're going to be in great shape. But if the Blazers take him, he may end up being their best player right away. But if they take him and one of the guards pops, or they get somebody else to kind of be that lead guy, you're in incredible shape with Cooper Flagg. I do think that he is in a situation where because his skill set is a little bit more diverse and not as focused on being a ball dominant, high usage scorer, that it does come across as a little role player-esque. I would describe him that way, while also having the caveat that I don't think role player is an insult or even implies that he's not going to be one of the 15 best players in the league, because I think both can be true.
Yeah, I mean, Chet is the second best player on an undefeated team that is playing like otherworldly defense.
Yeah.
So like I agree. I probably wouldn't call Chet a role player, but I understand what you mean when it's like he couldn't be the number one option on a team that wins a bunch of games.
Right.
But he can be the second best player on a team that wins so far all of the games.
Every game. Right.
As we're recording this, OKC has not lost. I believe they're tipping off right now. So if you hear this and they've lost, I'm sorry. That's only what they're started 7-0. Okay, assuming that the Blazers are probably picking in the top 5-ish, who
Mhm.
are some other names that I absolutely have to watch? I'm a Blazer fan. College basketball's kicking off this week. That's why we have you here. I just threw the Cooper Flagg grenade
Yeah.
on you right away. But like, who are the reason that you're here is because you talk about college basketball literally
Mhm.
on a microphone 1 hour every day minimum,
Yep.
at a minimum 1 hour every day. You do this a lot. Who are names I need to know if I'm watching college basketball this year?
I don't think this has ever been said before this year, but for people who want to follow players who are going to get picked in the top 5, you actually have to watch Rutgers basketball, which is insane. And you might have to watch BYU basketball, which is also insane. But for Rutgers, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, the second and third best prospects in this recruiting class. Ace Bailey did not play in Rutgers game today. He's dealing with what was listed as an undisclosed injury. It sounds like it's day-to-day, so hopefully not anything serious for him. Harper had 20 points. Rutgers is going to be really bad without those two guys. I can shock they were ranked in the top 25. I did not have them in the top 25 because I think that they have two really good freshmen and they have nobody else on the team who's very good. But those two guys are really legitimate. Both kind of wing players, both just really, really talented players. They're going to play off each other really well, and they're going to be fun basketball to watch. I mentioned BYU because Igor Demin is their freshman point guard. He's from Russia. He's a little older for a freshman. He's played professionally for like half a decade, so he's coming in a lot more experienced. He had 18 points and 11 assists and 1 turnover in his first game. It was against Central Arkansas, who's not good, but he looked – he threw an alley-oop to another freshman from half court. Like, he looks really, really polished. And I say point guard, and I know some Blazers fans are probably wincing, but he's 6'8". He's a 6'8" point guard who had 11 assists in his first game. Like, there's a reason that before he'd ever played, he was mocked in the top 10, and now he's probably going to start getting mocked even higher than that. They have another freshman, Kenan Catchings, who is worth keeping an eye on too, but he's probably going to be more of a late first type guy. But those are the two teams, interestingly, that you wouldn't expect to have to watch a lot of basketball of, but that I think are going to be worth keeping an eye on. And there's a lot of other great freshmen this year too that are going to be. VJ Edgecombe did not have a very good first game. I want
to ask you about him. Let's
please ask me about him.
I know he did dunk on Mark Few's son, and that was the only thing anyone talked about. But the reason that he dunked on Mark Few's son is because Gonzaga was up by 25,000 points, and Mark Few's son got to get into the game. Let's talk VJ Edgecombe and a couple other guys to watch in the second segment. Join us there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the official sports betting partner of the NFL, and they want to make it more fun for you to watch NFL games. So we're about to kick off another week of football with Thursday night action and then Sunday and Monday. And if you are watching a game and you've got a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more all on the same page where you place your bets. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. Still a pass versus point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Still chatting here with Andy Patton, Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Zags. True friend of the program. I throw that around a lot. Andy Patton's a friend of the program. This is a real friend of the program. Andy, VJ Edgecombe did one thing that I saw, and that's he dunked on poor Mark Few's kid. But his team got dragged. I saw him play for the Bahamas a bunch this summer. I was watching my man DeAndre Ayton, and VJ Edgecombe pops. It was the first time I turned on the game. I was like, yeah, that's an NBA player. Like, no doubt about it. Tell me and our dear listeners what we can expect watching the Baylor Bears this year. And yeah, you can gloat a little bit about how freaking good the Zags are.
Yeah, it was. I did not expect a 38-point win. I don't think anybody expected a 38-point win, but that's what we ended up seeing in that game. And Baylor is a team that had 4 new starters, new starting point guard, new starting center. It takes some time, transfer portal era, blah, blah, blah. Gonzaga looked amazing. Baylor looked bad. That's what we're going to say there. With VJ Edgecombe, he looked really raw in this game, which was surprising because one of the big things people kind of liked about him coming in as a freshman was, oh, he's going to be ready to play right away. He's got this Olympic experience. And I mean, he was the best player for this Bahama team that had multiple NBA players on the roster. It was surprising and I think there's some rule stuff. FIBA rules are different than college basketball. And I think some of the adjustment there. And if you go back and you watch the tape for this game, a lot of it was him driving in the lane, expecting to get a foul call, didn't get the foul call. It was a pretty physical game. The refs let him play. And I think he wasn't expecting a lot of that, but he's a better athlete than everybody on the floor, everybody on both teams by a landslide. And he didn't get to that as much as I think he will later in the year. I have a feeling Scott Drew's going to say, look, dude, if you got a second of space, just go. Like, don't try to lean in and get contact. Just go, blow by people, jump over people. I mean, he did. Finally, he was 1 of 10, and then he dunked on Mark Few's son, and sent him into another world and finished the game 2 of 11. Like, that's like, it was a very cathartic dunk for him, I think, to just kind of get some momentum in a game where they've never really had any. But he's an incredible athlete. He had a block shot on Graham Ike, who's about 6'10", and he was, I think, VJ jumped from the other side of the key and blocked that shot in Graham's face. Like, he's a really good athlete, and I don't think he's as raw as he looked in this game, but he's still got some stuff to work out, and it's a long season. And I have a feeling, I mean, freshmen at Baylor have thrived in the last few years. You had Jacoby Walter last year. You had Keontae George a few years before that. Like, they've put dudes in the league from this position. I think, interestingly, it's not a perfect comparison, but Edgecombe's an undersized guard who's hyper athletic and doesn't seem to have a lot of the playmaking skills. And so I think some people are like, oh, is he a Russell Westbrook? And some of the comparisons that we heard for Scoot Henderson, who is a better passer than VJ Edgecombe, because that's just not really what Edgecombe has ever been asked to do. And it won't be his role in the NBA, but there is a question of, if he's only going to succeed by out athleting people, that's going to catch up to him in the NBA. So we do want to see, if you're watching him, can he be more of a facilitator? Can he be more consistent as a shooter, which is something we didn't see in this game? But I think ultimately those things will show up, and he will still be a top 5, top 8 pick at worst. But it wasn't a great start for him. And a lot of freshmen had really good first games, and he was not one of them.
I know you have a young child at home, so maybe this isn't in the cards for you, but have you looked into hotels in April in San Antonio yet?
Yeah, I have, actually. They look that good. I mean, their defense was not expected to be good, and they held Baylor to 63 points. It's hard to not be.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It's the first week in November, and Andy is already thinking about it. I love it. Okay. So I think there is some trepidation within the Blazers fan base, and a lot of these guys are international players like Nolan Traore, that like they might go guard, and then if they go guard, the implication in the if they get a top 5 pick and they draft a guard because Dylan Harper is like, is that good, and that it's like damning of their previous picks. So I want to stray away from there and talk about some bigger guys. Tell me about Illinois' freshman who. I know you'll get his name right, so I'm gonna let you do it. But if I'm watching, I guess I'm gonna watch Big Ten basketball with the Ducks this year, which feels very weird. But tell me about what I'm gonna see if I'm tuned in to see the Illini this year.
Yeah, they got a couple good freshmen. First of all, they're going to be not good defensively, so
good games to watch.
What's hard about that is when the whole team is bad at defense, it's a little bit harder to evaluate if like individual players are good at defense, and I think that's going to be the hard thing to look at with Jakusionis, is how you would say their freshman there, Lithuanian guard. Younger on the younger end for a freshman. So we're going to see kind of what he looks like. 6'4", 6'5"-ish, kind of a long, lanky guard. He's got a lot of skills. I think he's a guy who's going to be a decent shooter, a decent facilitator, a bigger point guard type. But yeah, I think the defense is going to be the question for him. And again, I believe Brad Underwood, the Illinois coach, had a quote before the season where he said that there are 7th grade teams in the state of Illinois that would score 80 on his team. And he said it kind of jokingly, but if you look at his face, I don't think he was joking that much. So that's the big question I have with them. They have some other players. Will Riley was awesome for them. He had 31 in their first game. He's a really talented scorer, a good shooter. Illinois' offensive system is going to really let those guys get a lot of shots up. They're going to go, they're going to run, they're going to score a lot of points in bunches. And I think that that's going to make them really pop. If for fans who are looking at highlights, who are watching, condensed versions of the games, you're going to see, wow, that guy's scoring a whole bunch of points and he looks great and the team scoring 95 and he's awesome. But the defense is a big question for them. And I kind of worry that they're not going to get a chance to look very good on that end of the floor. And so whoever drafts them is going to kind of just be hoping that that's something that they can improve on, because I don't think you're going to see much of it for them at Illinois.
Okay, this is highlight scouting for me, but I saw Trey Johnson's highlights at Texas.
Yeah.
And he looked, so I've never seen him miss a shot, right? I've seen him play highlights from his first game, and I've never seen him miss. He looked nuts, and the box score is nuts too. How good do you think Trey Johnson could be? He seems like, to me, a pretty big riser the first week of November. Obviously, reality will probably set in at some point, or he'll be a top 3 pick.
Yeah, he's a guy who I think thrives in the NBA. He needs space to operate. I think he's somebody who the college game is almost going to be a negative for him, just in the sense that, Texas moving from the Big 12 to the SEC probably helps him because SEC teams are not as good defensively and are going to be playing at a faster pace. So he's going to get more usage, more touches, more shot opportunities based on that first game alone. And Texas was missing one of their starting guards, Tremont Mark, who is very good, who is a high usage player. So when he comes back, we probably won't see as many 30 burgers from Trey Johnson, but I think he's the best player on that team. I think he's better than Mark. He's better than Jordan Pope, their Oregon State transfer. And I think he's going to continue to be the best player for that team. And if Rodney Terry, the coach there, is doing the right thing, he's going to get the majority of touches. But he is a guy who needs space. He's a great driver. He's a great shooter. He's more of an offensive prospect than he is on the other end of the floor by a long shot at this point. And I think that that's probably going to be an area of concern for him. Even in his first few years in the league, granted, most young players are not very good defensively in their first few years in the league anyway. But he's somebody who I think, watching him in college, the skill set is going to be even better in the NBA. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is somebody who rises all the way into that top 5 based on how he looked in that first game, at least.
Yeah. Listen, I watched a highlight of him take like a 29-footer off the dribble around a screen, a catch and shoot leaning 3 from the corner. It's just like, yeah, dude, if he's 6'5", 6'6", and he does that, like, he could play on any team in the league. But also, like, I watched a highlight package on social media after one game. So I don't know anything. Okay. So I think we've touched on most of the top 10-ish guys. Is there anyone else before we get out of here that if you are tuning in now in the first week of college basketball, Carolina versus Kansas on Friday afternoon is going to probably kill me, but I'll be all right. I'll make it. I'll make it through. A true road game in Lawrence, first week of the season, is bonkers. But I'm going to be watching that. Both what other games that I should tune into, or some other teams that I should try to watch in this early season of college basketball.
Oh man, one of the players I really want to talk about is also on a bad team, so I feel bad suggesting all these bad teams for you. But Asa Newell is a freshman at Georgia who hasn't gotten as much love as I think many of his counterparts. He had 26 points and 11 boards in his first game for the Bulldogs. He had 22 shot attempts. I don't think anybody else on Georgia took more than 8. So he's probably going to put up huge numbers all season long because that team's not very good, and he is fantastic. He's 6'9", stretch 4, shoots the 3 well, blocks shots, kind of has that unicorn-ish skill set. I think because of his size, he's probably not going to be like an elite rim protector. He's also very skinny, so he's got some bulking up to do, but he's a player that I would keep an eye on for sure. Derek Queen had the first 2020 game for a player making his debut since Michael Beasley, who was pretty good in college. Derek Queen's at Maryland, another not very good team, but he's going to put up
Big
some
Ten basketball, baby.
Numbers.
Though I'm a Big Ten basketball.
Big Ten, there you go, right? You got it. So those are a couple kind of lesser known guys that I think I'd keep an eye on. For some other guys too, Colin Murray Boyles is a very good player for South Carolina. Tyrese Proctor at Duke, if you want to watch some older guard prospects, I think he's going to be a guy who shows up. Perhaps your Carolina guys, we'll see. Ian Jackson and Drake Powell, I think they're both exciting, but I'm not sure that I keep seeing them mocked in the top 15, and I'm like, they're not starting for North Carolina.
Yeah,
so
I wouldn't. They might leave, but I would say after night 1 of the season, and a little bit I saw of them in the preseason when they played like a charity game that was on TV against Memphis.
Yeah.
Charity for ESPN, but they didn't look like pros to me yet. They didn't look like pros to me yet. But we're on the hunt. We're on the hunt for a 21st century All-Star from Carolina, so we'll get there. We haven't had a 21st century All-Star.
That's shocking.
Yeah. Do you know that? There's a stat for you for all my haters out there. Carolina has not had a All-Star since Vince Carter left in the 99 draft. Now, Vince made All-Star appearances after that, obviously, right. But no 21st century All-Stars from Carolina. But, check the banners, y'all. Check them. I'll show them. I'll point to you. We got a whole bunch of them up there. Andy, thanks so much for joining the program. We're going to have you back on soon because this is kind of the nature of this team is that we're going to be watching some college basketball this season. Folks, if you're looking for Andy, just freaking go to YouTube because he's there all the time. Locked on College Basketball 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. Locked on Zags 5 days a week. They're a very, very good college basketball team, maybe without pros, but a very good college basketball team 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. And guess what? That's how the network works. So right here, Locked on Blazers, wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I will talk to you soon.